Things we have experienced during the school year have taught us many things, like how to use technology in an efficient manner so we can get the job done effectively and without wasting time. Having buddies from different grades allows us to solidify our learning for a wide range of academics, as well as pass that learning onto those buddies. The experiential field trips that give us a taste of the real world that combined with the inside research allows us to solidify our learning, as well as have a better learning experience that will enable us to make connections across subjects. We usually started sketching out the most detailed leaf we could, and then researching the leaves, the different parts of the leaf, and their significance for the trees. We then went on to Kubota Garden to observe the plant life, and get to see the leaves with jeweler loops. The jeweler loops enabled us to observe the leaves at larger magnifications and details. We then sketched what we saw.
I do say so myself, this is quite fancy.
Our perception of careful observation has changed between the times we drew the leaf. The first time compared to the time we drew the leaf at close observation, drastically. We learned that unless you take time and observe, you won't be able to get all the details, and that with careful observation can show you a whole new perspective on the thing you were just looking at.
Our group also researched more about the leaves using Discovery Education.
Leaves are nature's food factories. They're where green plants carry on most of their photosynthesis. Here's a cross-section of a typical leaf as it looks through a microscope. Notice the tiny openings or pores on its underside. Called a stoma, each of these openings is a tiny door through which air and the carbon dioxide it contains enters leaves.
Real life allows us to experience things ourselves, to add to our own experiences. But with 3D objects, we can learn from more detailed observations that others have made. And with those details, we can slow down even more, rather than in real life, and take our time to observe what is in front of us. In The Hound of the Baskervilles, Sherlock took his time, though away from the epicenter, to observe the situation at hand. We did the same. We took our time away from the leaves at Kubota, sketched and researched about them at school, observed them, and then, like in the book, we went to the epicenter of the action to actually observe the situation in our own perspective.
Why leaves? How do they tie in with Sherlock and observation? In The Hound of the Baskervilles, the villain, Stapleton, was a botanist.
When you observe, you can notice things happen in a certain way, like how the winds blow each season. If you can put these together, they become patterns, and if you put patterns together, they become clues. And you should be able to establish evidence for these clues by recording these patterns.
Objective is facts, without any bias, because nothing is free of bias. Nothing is 100% objective. Subjective is in our own perspective, like an opinion. Metaphors are opinions because they are a result of our own experiences.
The best way we tried to understand the article was to try and tear apart the quote. You see, but you do not observe. The importance of this quote is that you can see something, but if you do not slow down to observe, you won't know the details.
We can observe the way that Sherlock Holmes works, the way that he observes, and the way he forms answers to begin to work like Sherlock. We can slow down and begin a habit of observing one thing every day.
To do this, we can take time off of every day and just observe how a specific thing works, whether it's a person, nature, or weather patterns. Another way we can do this is that we can take field notes of what we observed.
The example that they give about stairs is that Watson couldn't recall the number of steps, and Sherlock tells him that he doesn't observe and that there are 17 steps. It is a very specific example. It shows that if you just look at the stairs as stairs, you won't know that it has 17 steps, but if you observe, you will be able to know the amount of stairs there.
The How to Think Like Sherlock article shows that the benefit of mindfulness, such as improvements in the psychological well-being, emotional regulation, and connectivity in the brain. It also tells us the magic behind mindfulness is both seeing and observing. And as you start to get in the habit of slowing down and observing, you start to observe more minute things, such as facial expression. The articles we read on Sherlock Holmes and observation connect with other subjects because everything we do requires observation, that we should slow down and just pay attention.
What the Life Hacker article was trying to explain is that we should gradually get yourself into a habit of slowing down and observing things. And to do this daily, and after a while, you will start to see the world as Sherlock does, and that his mindfulness and observation skills can be in your hands.
How this relates to the project is the science of how our brains work. In our rushed lives, we should just slow down and observe, like the way we went to Kubota, to just take time off our day and observe the details of leaves.
One of the classic tricks for forming a new habit is to gradually work yourself into it every day. Since we're looking at observation as a habit, let's start by observing one new thing every day.
You can discover more about a person in an hour of play than in a year of conversation. If you observe the experiences you have with a person, you can learn more about them, more so if you listen about the experiences they have had.
A wise man can learn more from a foolish question than a fool can learn from a wise answer. A wise person will learn to observe the actions of the foolish, but the foolish man doesn't take his time to observe the wise one's advice.
One day you said to me, I saw the sunset 44 times. And a little later you added, one loves the sunset when one is so sad. Were you so sad then, I asked, on the day of the 44 sunsets?
Like the example of the stairs with Sherlock Holmes, the little prince didn't only see the sunsets, but he observed and paid attention to them. Otherwise, he wouldn't have known that he had seen 44 sunsets in that one day.
I have in my pocket a manuscript, said Dr. James Mortimer. I observed it as you entered the room, said Holmes. It is an old manuscript, early 18th century, unless it is a forgery.
Observing things that others don't isn't the only thing that observation gets you. It allows you to develop a new skill of being able to look at fine details and come to educated conclusions like never before, like how Sherlock was able to deduce where the manuscript was from without even fully seeing it.
The refreshing nature of nature, the whistling of the wind with the rustling of the leaves are like the crisp sound of crumpling of paper. Men tend to think that it has control over nature, when in truth, it's nature that controls men. The fern's leaves are like the blade of a jagged knife, but as menacing as it is, 'tis but a soft, delicate fabric. Let the jagged slices of nature stab you like a refreshing blast of nature's wind, yet of something of its own. The leaf is like a pine being stretched into this way. The bumps could be slit and stretched, yet of something of its own. The cordate leaves look like a heart with stripes and crystals, the pointy edges of the dog collars, yet of something of its own.
Refreshing blast mint, group like Father, Son, Spirit, yet of something of its own. The refreshing nature of nature. The whistling of the wind with the rustling of the leaves are like the crisp sound of the crumpling of paper. Men tend to think that it has its control over nature, when in truth it is nature that controls men.
During the time of reading the OneNote and the requirements, we told our partners the difference between objective and subjective, and we used that to tell why metaphors and similes are subjective, while the facts about the actual leaf are objective.
We participated in a workshop led by an artist in residence, showing us how to observe and create a pitch for a reimagined adaptation of The Hound of the Baskervilles, and we saw the play. There are many ways to understand blending and learning, such as working with partners through reading, Shakespeare poetry, the prose of Sherlock Holmes, and information text.